So I do want to focus on and kind of hyper, or I guess zoom in, I should say, on the Lakers. Out of the three teams, Bucks, Clippers, Lakers, I have them third. Last in terms of confidence I have, faith I have that they can get to the finals, let alone win the finals. Because what they've showed so far, through the first 8 games, and now through the first game playing against Portland, I think there's legitimate concern for this team. And not just a legitimate concern that, they look vulnerable to the Clippers, They look vulnerable if they meet the Bucks in the finals. They look vulnerable, and there's legitimate concern that they might even make it out of the first round. There should be legitimate concern and worry that the Trailblazers match up well, are playing well. I can get this series done, get a 1/8 upset. A few reasons why. Number one, we talked about this in the open. The 3 favorites struggled in the seeding games, and at least personally for me, I didn't take it seriously because I kind of viewed these games again as opportunities and basically preseason games for these teams to get their groove on, get back in a rhythm after being off for 4 months, and gear up to where the playoffs actually started. They'll be good to go. So Lakers going 3-5 really shouldn't be alarming. The fact that their offense was putrid, shouldn't be too alarming. Because again, it was an opportunity to work back into shape, get sharp for the playoffs. But guess what happened so far? Tuesday night. Their 3-point shooting woes, their points, and the lack of really role players at all, any depth, came to the forefront. Really reared its ugly head and cost the Lakers, at least in game 1. I mean, they were shooting bad from 3-point range in the seeding games. They shot even worse. Somehow they went worse in game 1 against Portland. So they were last in 3-point shooting percentage from teams in the bubble. They followed that up by going an outstanding 5 for 32 behind the arc Tuesday night against the Blazers. 5 for 32. For you math whizzes out there, I'm sure you already did it. But for those of you who are not, like myself, I did the math already. That's 15.6%. Tell me how many teams are going to win championships, win series, when you are shooting 15% from behind the arc in a league that really now has become prevalent with the 3-point shooting. It does not really breed well. You had Danny Green, a main 3-point shooter, go 2 for 8. Kyle Kuzma, the guy you thought was going to be the third player to kind of really step up behind Anthony Davis, behind LeBron James, and be kind of that guy to take over, 1 for 5. Anthony Davis shot a few threes, 0 for 5 himself. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a guy you think should be one of those guys, that's his role is to knock down threes, 0 for 5. So to say you need to shoot better from behind the arc to have a chance is an understatement. That's an understatement of understatements. And this isn't just one bad game where, okay, let's not overreact. This is, they'll come back to the mean. It's just a cold night. Teams all the time have cold nights in the NBA, right? And it's sports after all. No one goes perfect. But why this is concerning is because this is just a continuation from the seeding games. Again, dead last in 3-point shooting in those 8 games, and they continue that by going 15% from 3 in game 1. So yeah, there's legitimate concern. This is not one bad night. This is starting to become a pattern. That the rim's moving on them. They can't knock down the open jumper. And it's so far costing them. And speaking of which, the bad 3-point shooting obviously goes hand in hand with their struggle to score points. So they scored 93 points on Tuesday night. Remember I said in the open, if me, you, and 3 of your friends put together a pickup team of 5 guys, and we played Portland, we would score 100 points. Now, they would probably score 300 points. Well, I don't think any of us is going to check Damian Lillard, don't get me wrong. But we'll score 100 points. That's how bad Portland's defense is. They came in 20th of 22 teams in defensive efficiency. The reason why they were winning was because their offense was outstanding. And the reason why I took the Lakers and I thought it was going to be a quick series, 5 games, was because, sure, they could score with anyone. But their defense is so bad, they have no answer for Anthony Davis. They have no answer for LeBron James. And anyone else who wants to score, they'll be able to score at will. Why that 93 points is significant is because this is the first time Portland held a team under 100 points in a game since January 7th. First time the Trailblazers have not allowed 100 points since January 7th. 37 games between that game and now. Think about that. Think about how bad you have to be offensively to a team that gives up 100 points, and that's basically the starting point. It's a given. 37 games in a row, they've given up over 100 points, and the Lakers couldn't do it. And again, this is a team with a terrible, terrible, terrible defense. So you look at the trends right now. The Lakers, before the stoppage, right, when they were really heating up, they were really hitting their groove. Remember, they had that big stretch. They beat the Bucks, they beat the Celtics, and they beat the Clippers. They were 7th in the league in points per game. They were 1st in field goal percentage in the league. Well, now they entered Tuesday, last in points per game, 19th out of 22 in field goal percentage. And guess what? Those numbers got worse in game 1. So you can't shoot from 3. Leads to you struggle to score points. You can't even score points against a defense that is basically giving you points. They're saying, here, start with 100 and we'll see if we can outscore you from there. And they couldn't do it. First time in 37 games, the Blazers held the team under 100 points. And finally, my last concern that makes it a legitimate threat, and a legitimate concern at least, that the Lakers won't be able to get out of the first round, let alone really be any title contender, is that who is their third contributor? Who's the guy that's going to really give them some juice, some scoring? That, sure, you take the pressure off LeBron James, you take the pressure off Anthony Davis. When those two are being watched, someone else will benefit from all that attention not being on them. It should be Kyle Kuzma, right? Talent-wise, it should be the guy. But he has not been able to do it consistently. Like I said, Danny Green going 2 for 8 from 3, couldn't hit water from a boat Tuesday night. KCP, Alex Caruso, at best, are role players. So it can't just be the LeBron and AD show. Because if that's the case, if the Lakers' strategy is have LeBron score as many points as possible, have Anthony Davis dominate as much as possible, that's a strategy we've seen in the playoffs doesn't always work. Lends itself to really keeping yourself exposed. And what happened? If LeBron James doesn't have an out-of-his-mind game, if Anthony Davis doesn't have a career night, the Lakers are seriously in trouble. They are seriously in trouble. Anthony Davis struggled from the floor. What happened? Lakers couldn't keep up. No one else around him stepped up. The entire strategy right now is relying on 2 guys. You're playing 2 against 5. So yeah, depth is a legitimate concern. When your entire game plan offensively is pray, that LeBron goes 30 and 20, AD is like 40 and 20, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the guys can make a few shots out from the outside. That's not a winning formula. That breeds concern. And I have that concern, which is why I think the Lakers are in serious trouble. And again, not just to get out of the first round or make it to, or I should say, not just to win the finals, make it to the finals. They're in serious, legitimate concern, and they're in serious trouble not even being able to get out of the first round. I'll say this. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me once, shame twice, shame on me, right? I'll equate this to the NFL. Because I think right now you can make the same argument for the Patriots this past year and the Lakers right now. And that is this. The Patriots, right, were okay. They're kind of going by, looking good. But for the most part, especially towards, the end of November and December, they didn't really look great. The offense was struggling. Tom Brady was on the same page as his receivers. And the offense was really struggling to score points. And myself, I just was a believer in the Patriots. I was one of those guys where I got to see it to believe it. And that is the offense struggles at home, and they get eliminated early by a team with not enough talent. So despite losing at home in the final week to lose a bye against the Dolphins, despite the offense really, really struggling that last month of the year to score points, I said, you know what? I'm still a believer in the Patriots. I still think they'll be in the AFC title game. May even upset, to get there, either the Ravens or the Chiefs. Like, I'm still, until I see it with my own eyes, I believe Tom Brady, I believe Bill Belichick would get it done. And once the playoffs come around, they'll flip a switch. But what happened? We get to the AFC wildcard. You have Gillette Stadium, Saturday night at night. All right, the Patriots never lose these games. What happens? The Titans come in there, punch them in the mouth, and the Titans leave victorious. And you know what? You go back, you go on Monday, we're talking about the show, and what happens? You reflect. Wow, I guess that offense, struggling for the last month of the year, there was no magic switch that was flipped. There was no magic formula that all of a sudden had the offense clicking. So I made the mistake of not believing what I saw. Right? Because the Patriots gave you nothing to believe in that last month. And guess what? That carried over to the playoffs. So I'm going to do the same thing with the Lakers here. Through these 8 games, through the first game of the playoffs against the Blazers, they have given you no reason to believe. Like I said, these issues of scoring, this struggle to hit shots from beyond the arc, it's not a one-game problem. It's not a one-night issue where everyone was off, okay, you bounce back and it'll be better. They were the worst three-point shooting team in the bubble. They had the lowest amount of points per game scored. That's 9 games now. That's a pattern. That's not an anomaly. So I'm believing it. I didn't believe with the Patriots, I got burned. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm believing it. So I think the struggle from behind the arc is going to continue, which will lead to their struggle to score points, which to me gives Portland a massive, massive window right now to take advantage and get the upset. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in Portland. I'm a believer in the Trailblazers. I'm a believer that there's legitimate concern for the Lakers. They're going to need Herculean efforts at best from both LeBron and AD for this rest of the series just to get out of there. Just to get out of the series. So there are warning signs to the Lakers. I'm not ignoring them this time. I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think in your mind, is there a legitimate concern? Should there be a legitimate concern for the Lakers? One of my good friends, big Lakers fan. As you can imagine, the texts were flying on Tuesday night. But I asked him seriously, after thinking about what is your concern level? Because again, the signs are there. The warning signs are there. He said my concern level went from 5% to 10%. Basically brushing it off, not worried at all. And I guess a believer in Anthony Davis, a believer in playoff LeBron James. And using the mindset I used with the Patriots, and that until you see it, until the Lakers actually go down, until LeBron James actually loses the first round, he's never done that. 13 straight years in a row, he's got out of the first round. Well, it's the third longest behind. I think it's Derek Fisher and Robert Horry. Two of the guys who have longer streaks of getting out of the first round without losing. So LeBron's never done it. We've never seen it before. But I'm not going to wait to see it. I'm not going to believe it when I see it. I'm believing it now. I think there's legitimate concern. There's legitimate worry around the Lakers. And they are in serious trouble to get out of the first round. You heard Charles Barkley Tuesday night. Before the game, he said if Portland wins this first game, they're sweeping the series. He believes that game was really going to be the barometer and set the tone for the rest of the series. The Lakers showed they couldn't, all those woes, all those struggles they had in those seeding games, you could brush it off and say, they're not really, they're not gearing up for those games. LeBron's not into it. He sees the end goal. LeBron has done a great job throughout his career of pacing himself. He never turns it on too early. So that way he's playing his best basketball when it matters the most, which is now in the playoffs. But right now we haven't seen that. He hasn't been able to pace himself. He hasn't been able to flip the switch, I should say, to get to playoff LeBron. So is there a concern? I am very concerned. Very, very, very concerned that the Lakers can't even get out of the first round of the playoffs.